Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the June meeting of the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll start with item 1 on the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
And I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Public comment on matters not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience wishes to speak on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, which is the approval of our May 16th, 2019 minutes. And I'll make a motion that they be approved as presented.
And I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Report out on our closed session.
The board did meet in closed session to confer with legal counsel on the matter of anticipated litigation which is identified in the closed session agenda, and no action was taken.
Thank you. Item 5, review of monthly and year-to-date revenue.
Good morning, members of the
Okay.
board. Sorry,
Hi,
my
Jen.
mic wasn't working. So I'll be reporting out on the month for the revenue and expenses for the month of April 2019. In Fund 870, the beginning balance was approximately $7.4 million. There was no revenue. Our expenses were $27.5 thousand. So the ending cash position for 870 is pretty close to the beginning balance of $7.4 million. In Fund 871, the starting balance was negative $9.7 million. Our revenue was about $100,000. Expenses were $1.3 million. And the ending cash position for Fund 871 was negative $10.9 million. Looking at the year-to-date position, along with the remaining advanced state funding, the combined cash position for 870 and 871 was approximately $12.6 million. As of June 12, 2019, the agency's combined cash position was approximately $13.6 million. The agency trued up eligible costs through quarter 31, which is January through March, and from real estate approvals, for Southport, which allowed the transfer of $6.155 million and $1.56 million respectively from Fund 257 to Fund 871. Estimated retention for all projects under the CFA is currently around $10 million. WSAFCA and DWR are finalizing retention release for the North Area construction projects, and that will reduce the held retention by approximately $2.06 million. The second installment of the flood assessment was posted on May 23rd, 2019 in the amount of approximately $2.1 million. That concludes my report. Do you have any questions for me?
No.
No, thank you.
right,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much. Items 6 and 7 are our consent agenda. Any
And
questions?
no questions.
Then,
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
and I will second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
None, hearing no one opposed. Motion carries. Consent items. Item 8, consideration of our budget.
Thanks, I know Roberta introduced me last time, but I'm
Yeah.
Senior Finance Analyst. Is it on? On the mic?
Right on the mic there at the base. There you go.
There we go. Thank you. All right, so today I'm bringing forward the proposed adopted budget for WSAFCA for the fiscal years 1920 and 2021. The proposed budget is primarily exactly as what was presented at the workshop with a few minor changes. So the 3 funds that have minor changes, note that one. There we go. Our Fund 652, the Flood Support Services, or Flood Support Administration, Fund 870, the WSAFCA Administration and Operations Fund, and Fund 871, which is the WSAFCA Capital Projects Fund. The majority of the items are the same as what was presented at the workshop. That includes the 2% increase in the assessment revenues for Fund 870. There is a 9.4% decrease in the expenditures in 1920 and a 1.9% decrease in 2021. The reduced authorized position is now 6.76 FTEs. This is primarily due to the vacancy of the senior analyst position, that when it will be filled, the FTE was reduced to more accurately reflect what that position will be doing in support of the WSAFCA. In addition, you will see that staff costs are slightly skewed in 1920. This is due to an upcoming retirement and the associated leave payouts with that retirement. And as what was brought at the workshop, there is a projected surplus for Fund 870 of $1.5 million in 1920 and $1.65 million in 2021. So looking at Fund 652, I broke out the 2 fiscal years. The left column is what was brought forward at the workshop. The center column is what I'm presenting as today's adopted budget. And the column on the right is an increase or decrease for the change since the workshop. So one of the first things that you will notice is that there has been an increase in the personnel cost of $50,000 in 1920 and $79,000 in 2021. This is primarily due to an increase in salaries and benefits related to an unrepresented compensation study performed by the city. You will also see a decrease of $2,000 for general support allocation in 1920 and $14,000 decrease in 2021. This is due, and the smaller decrease is due to a decrease in the percentage allocated for City Hall maintenance to WSAFCA in the first year. And in the second year, there's a larger increase because the cost of the facility maintenance overall went down, so it decreased everyone's allocation for the facility maintenance fees. With the salary and benefits going up, you also see the work order billing and ICAP revenues increasing as we have a little bit higher cost recovery with the increase in salary. And in return, you see a slight decrease in the contribution from Fund 870 to bring Fund 62 to a 0 at both year ends. Going to Fund 870, pretty much nothing changed. The only change that you will see is in the city support costs. There is that matching decrease in the transfer from Fund 870 to 652. That went down primarily because the increase in being able to bill out for work order billing and ICAP. Next, Fund 871, the WSAFCA Capital Projects. There is one budget request of $150,000, and that is related to the North Area EIP closeout. At the workshop, this was presented as $100,000. Since then, it has increased to $150,000. Everything else remains the same for that fund. And then lastly, I did want to go over just really quick the general support allocation and the indirect cost allocation plan, also known as ICAP. So the GSA is an allocation of the city-wide indirect costs that's to all the various cost centers based off of specific information for each of those cost centers, whether it be based off of FTEs or potentially square footage of City Hall. The items that Flood Support Services is allocated is liability insurance, general support, City Hall maintenance, and facility maintenance. The items that are not allocated to WSAFCA is revenue collection, property insurance, and fleet maintenance. Now, ICAP is a calculation approved by Caltrans that's used for recuperating the city's overhead costs for projects which are funded by external parties. So the ICAP rate's based off of all the indirect costs for billable staff. This includes the indirect administrative expenses and leave accruals for the billable positions that can't be charged out to work orders. I know Roberta had brought this slide to you guys back in December, which kind of shows the flow of the general support allocation as well as ICAP. One of the things that also shows is one of the benefits of charging ICAP. So when the billable positions in Fund 652 charge out to these work orders that are primarily funded by external parties, we're recuperating a higher cost recovery by being able to do that. What that does in turn is actually reduces the amount that Fund 870, the administrative and operations fund, would then have to transfer at year end. And potentially, if the cost recovery is high, could result in a surplus in Fund 652 that would then be transferred to Funds 870 at year end. So that is all I have. If you guys have any questions, otherwise we are asking for you guys to adopt Resolution 190601, which is the adoption of WSAFCA's 2-year budget for 1920 and 2021.
Okay. Thank you. It's
you.
getting clearer and clearer.
Exactly.
Do you have any questions?
No.
I just have a couple questions on that contribution to, the WSAFCA contribution to 652 is projected this year at 436,000. Is that an amount that will be reconciled?
Yes.
Because we're going next year, we're starting on a monthly, kind of more accurate base figure, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So once we finish the fiscal year, we will come back with the actual numbers. And then at that point in time, we'll also discuss potentially moving the surplus in Fund 870 to 871.
Right, okay.
Yes, we will be coming back.
And then the last question on the WSAFCA's insurance. We show a substantial cost increase in the next 2 budget years. I know this year we saw a reduction because we changed carriers to a different firm, and we saw some reduction. Are we anticipating this large of an increase, or is it just budgeted there for? We've gone from about 80,000 to 109,000 in this next year. So hopefully that won't. Can you find it on?
Yeah,
870?
I can speak to that point,
go back.
Tom.
Okay.
There we go.
So the year over year between going with I think it's an insurance, bonded insurance that is like market insurance versus a JPA format that we're using right now, is that the basis comparable at that year will be lower going with the JPA, even with the membership fee associated with the JPA. But general liability costs, mostly related to California fires and inverse condemnation charges that have been incurring related to those fires with public agencies, and this type of insurance in general have been raising rates. So we probably can expect to see an upward trend in our general liability coverage going forward. But it's not related to the cost of the instrument. Relatively speaking, in any specific year, the format we have now with the JPA will be cheaper than the insurance that we would get at the market because of something to do with the Department of Insurance.
Okay,
They do
so I
that.
understand this is just a budget item, and we're just making sure we're
Yeah.
covering it, but we'll
I had a
see where we go.
I had a conversation with the carrier earlier about the rate increases because I thought they were kind of like, what's going on? And that's what's going on. The industry as a whole is seeing a lot of claims related to natural disasters and their impacts on public utilities and such.
Okay.
Yeah, as adding to that, the city has seen, we just made an adjustment last night at our council meeting, but the city's insurance for this year went up by almost $500,000, the liability
Yeah,
insurance.
well,
So we
I
are
figured
seeing
it
the
had to be
same-
related
same
to
thing.
what the market is doing, but it's good, okay. All right. Okay.
Ready to make a motion?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I move that we adopt Resolution 19-0601.
And I will second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no objections, motion carries. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah, thank you.
And Mark. Item 9, WSAFCA project updates.
Morning, Chair Ramos, members of the board. I'll just go over a few of the items that you have in your flood program update.
For the Southport levee project, one of the remaining items around the time oil site is the installation of monitoring wells. So the contractor's going to be out. They've already done a field visit. They're doing USAs now, and then we anticipate later this month for the wells to be installed. Staff was also able to secure our second and final grant reimbursement for the actual remediation of the site. But as I learned the other day, the well installation and the monitoring is also likely to be covered under the grant as well, so we may be receiving some true-ups later for the cost of the wells and the monitoring, which would be good. On the construction side of the house, borrow, restore, and some minor drainage improvements. Plans and specs are being crafted now by HDR. And in support of that, we're working with our environmental consultant, GEI, to determine the appropriate level of environmental coverage for the additional work that we're doing. And it looks like we will be needing to do a supplemental environmental impact report, supplemental EIR. So we have yet to, excuse me, make a final determination, but that's what it's looking like. We're going to ask our consultant to put together a schedule of time frame, which could impact when we go out to bid for the work and the time that we do the work. We are contemplating perhaps splitting out the work between borrow, restore, and the drainage improvements, because it's just very different work, so that we can move forward with the drainage improvements ahead of the winter season. Pretty much no matter which way we slice it, we're likely not going to be able to complete borrow, restore this construction season anyways, and so pushing that to next year and getting it done in one fell swoop might be the way we go. So we're working through all of those variables now, and we should know by the next meeting what path we're going to recommend taking. And then the contractor, the representative, returned to the job site the week of June 3rd to do punch list items and warranty repairs, and that work has been completed. And so that kind of wraps up most of the work that was remaining after the winter season. And then for Phase 3 restoration project, right now our contractor River Partners is in the process of providing all the various submittals needed to start the work. We have already, or in the process to change order for schedule and start of implementation of the work. As the board's aware, the higher than average river levels have been a barrier to getting out to the site and being able to do work as originally anticipated. So the river levels are coming down now. We're still going to have to wait for the area to dry out because it's still pretty swampy out there. So the start of work has been delayed, but it still looks like we'll be able to complete it during this construction season. At least what we had anticipated doing this particular year. The other thing of note is that we learned that we're required to get a encroachment permit from the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. So staff moved very quickly. Once we determined that one was needed, staff moved very quickly to submit the application. We are now calendared on the board's June meeting for an informational item. Expect to be followed up at the July meeting for action to approve the encroachment permit. Pretty much a formality, but nevertheless, we got to do it.
Why wasn't it part of the project as a whole, just oversight?
Well, can't really speak to it now because it was so long ago, and I don't recall the conversation that took place at the time, but there was a conscious decision at the time to separate the two out. Unfortunately, where it was located in the permit when we reviewed the permit wasn't where we expected to see the requirement, so it kind of slipped past us. Then on to the federal project for design. The PDT kickoff meeting was held June 13th. So we met a variety of the folks at the Corps who are going to be participating from the various disciplines, civil, hydraulic, scheduling, project management, et cetera. As the board knows, the non-federal sponsor is leading design. So at that meeting, or essentially at that meeting, the team received the draft scope of work for review. That was one that was prepared by WSAFCA and given to both state partners and federal partners, essentially at the meeting for their review and comment. The Corps also has distributed draft project management plan and a draft design review plan for review and comment. All of these comments are due by our next meeting, which is next Thursday. And by the way, we're going to be meeting bi-weekly until we get this thing kicked off. Then it will probably fall back to monthly coordination meetings. So we're hoping to get this scope of work comments from the Corps by next Thursday, so we can turn those around, finalize them, and then get it out to our list of consultants to be able to propose on a design and get that kicked off. If all goes well, we hope to be able to put that out on the street in July, and also then bring an item to the board in August to award a contract for design. And then separately from the normal PDT meetings, we're going to set up select meetings with the Corps on hydrology to ensure that we all agree on what models and/or model updates to be used as a basis for design, and then also to coordinate the environmental effort. We anticipate doing a joint NEPA-CEQA document. The Corps wants to lead the NEPA, we'll lead CEQA, so we're going to go through the coordination of how that rolls out. And that's pretty much it for the design of the next increment. Back in DC, revised 1043 guidelines were just issued. I got a copy of them this morning, was able to review those with our lobbyist. There's really three minor changes, but they're not negative. They're either benign or slightly positive. One kind of benign change was that it's around the non-federal sponsor submittal of an application. There was some clarification provided that if you're already under a project partnership agreement with the Corps, that you would have to remove the elements that would participate under 1043 and have a separate PPA for a 1043-led program. So it really was just kind of going through the logistics of you have to get out of the one and go into another in order to be able to proceed. There was, I'm wearing my contacts today, and I wrote too small. They eliminated a description of what a separable element means. It doesn't really affect us. But one of the things that they deleted, which I think may be able to help us, was in the previous guidelines, there was a prohibition against using 1043 to complete an increment of the project. And that prohibition has been removed. Now, how this fits into the rest of the requirements, it's still, it's still a tricky path for us to be able to participate in 1043 because it still does require full project, either completion or full project or separable element, which is defined as hydraulically separable and benefits separable, neither of which really apply to us. We still may be able to make a case for being able to fund an increment of our project, but I don't know how we're going to get through the separable element requirement. So doesn't mean we don't try, I just don't know how that's going to pan out. And they did reiterate the need for a project to receive a new start to be able to receive funds under 1043 for construction. So there's still the same metrics that would be used for any project under any funding scenario for a new start construction. And then lastly, the House passed their sort of little minibus bill. I think it had 5 separate bills. And that also included an amendment related to 1043. It was primarily, they put it, I'm not too sure exactly the purpose other than to draw attention to it, but the amendment increased the budget by $5 million, then subsequently decreased the budget by $5 million, and requested that Congress act to extend the implementation deadline. So the amendment didn't really do anything, but according to the summary, draw attention to Congress on the need to extend the program.
Good work.
So on the Senate side, so like I said, the House passed their little minibus bill. On the Senate side, hoping to take up the bill for markup in July. It looks like they will not get any floor time before the August recess, so it's likely the soonest that the Senate would take up the bill on the floor would be in September, kind of pushing the end of the fiscal year. My understanding is, at least from the headquarters perspective, is they want the Corps to have its work plan ready to go and submitted to DC by the end of July. So I'll be working with, to the extent that I can, and to the extent that we can influence the Corps' decision on what's going to be in the work plan, I'll be working with the district to ensure that, at a minimum, balance of PED funding recommended, and maximum recommendation for a new start construction for our first increment.
Is this work plan based on the plussed-up budget?
Yes.
That the House passed? Okay.
Yeah. So this definitely is going to be going in advance of a finalized Senate version and/or one that's final conference bill, so. Anyway, that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that the board may have.
One more on this work plan thing. Once it does pass, the Senate approves it and it's signed, is that work plan subject to further review or revisement before it's actually, put out?
I think, yes, the short answer is yes. There will be review and comments by the ASA's office. There will likely be review and comments by OMB before the work plan is finalized. And so, and then not knowing what the final bill in terms of the plussed up amounts, are they going to remain the same as what's recommended by the House? Or are they going to change one way or the other? Don't know. So if the dollar amounts change, then projects will either, below the line projects may come in, above the line projects may go out. Just sort of remains to be seen, but the answer is yes, there can be changes. And there's nothing that couldn't prevent a project that was relatively high above, the bar that would have stayed in regardless of the dollar amounts. There still could be changes, so, yeah. A lobbying effort might not be a bad idea to help influence final decisions.
It ain't over till it's over.
That's right.
Okay. That's it? Okay. Thank you. Keep on doing it. Item 10, director's comments. Anything?
No.
Okay. Either for me either. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.